Hi there, good morning. You're watching Market Cafe on ET Now with me, Snehisha, and with me is Lisa Fernandez. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Snehi. How come you're here? I thought you'll be celebrating and like sleeping the whole night. And
well, celebrations are already over, right? Because the match got over so quickly. We've had all the time in the world to celebrate, and let's talk about that a little bit more. Because for the record 8th time, Team India are the champions of Asia, and the men in blue have defeated the host and defending champion Sri Lanka at their own turf in the final of the Asia Cup 2023. And how, Lisa? Because despite losing the toss and having to bowl first, the Indian Pacers put on a show which would have made the greatest of the greats of the past proud.
right, and talking about the fast bowlers, they took all the wickets as they ripped into the Lankan batting unit and bowled them out for 50. Mohammad Siraj was the chief protagonist and claimed around 6 scalps. Hardik Pandya, he took around 3 wickets, while Jasprit Bumrah, he claimed a solitary wicket. Well, the men in blue, they chased down the paltry total in no time, with Shubman Gill and Ishan getting off the blocks and winning the game in just 6.1 overs. Well, so that was the cricket commentary, but let's now move on to the market commentary. And how's the international handover coming in, like, Snehi?
Absolutely, Lisa. And let's take a look at how US markets have done then. And US stock futures inched up Sunday night as investors look towards the Federal Reserve's next policy decision. Now, the broad market index and the NASDAQ both ended the previous trading week in the red, marking their second straight week of losses. The Dow managed to end the week just 0.1% higher, so not doing much last week for the Dow, and investors are widely anticipating that the Fed will hold interest rates steady. However, traders will be keeping a close eye to get a better sense on the central bank's stance on inflation from here. Recent inflation data, remember, it came in largely in line with economists' expectations. While the producer price index gained more than expected, the core PPI, which excludes the food and energy, matched the estimate. Now, policymakers will be looking towards more economic data that releases today. September's housing market index data is scheduled to be released, and the New York Fed will also be announcing September's business leaders survey results. So this is coming in on the US handover. Dow not doing much, broader markets also ending largely in the red. But moving on to Europe then, European markets closed slightly higher, so some positivity coming on Europe on Friday as traders reacted to the European Central Bank's suggestion that its latest hike may be its last. Now, the ECB increased interest rates by 25 bips, which is a 10th consecutive hike, taking its main rate to a record high of 4%. The regional stock 600 index ended up with an uptick of 0.2%, which most sectors and major bosses were pointing in the positive territory as well. Household goods led up the gains, led by 1.4%, while luxury stocks got a boost from Chinese retail sales figures. The stock 600 index climbed 1.5% on Thursday, which was its best session since the start of June. So positivity coming in from the European markets. But this is largely on the equity markets globally. But Lisa, take us through what commodities did then.
Right, so actually the crude oil prices, they hit a 10-month high on Friday, and many moving parts actually to this, because as we know, the extension of the oil cuts from Saudi Arabia as well as Russia, and that was combined with the demand coming in from China, optimism around China demand on the back of better than expected industrial output as well as retail sales data that came in quite positive. Also, the data on Friday, it showed that the Chinese oil refinery process, that was up 20% on year-on-year basis, and the processors, they kept the run rate high to capitalize on the high global demand for oil products. So if I look at oil prices right now, early morning, the WTI crude oil, that was at around $90 per barrel, but if I look at the price now, it's trending at $91.2 per barrel. The Brent crude oil, that is at around $94.2 per barrel. We can see optimism around the crude oil prices. But coming on to gold, that stands at around $1,947 per ounce, and that was and it rose 1% on weekly basis. So that was on the crude as well as the commodity checks, Nehi.
Absolutely, Lisa. Now, let's take a look at all the cues that you should be keeping on your radar for this week. I understand it's a truncated week since we have a holiday tomorrow, but we still have a lot of cues to watch out for globally as well as domestically. Let's look at global first. September 20th, well, all eyes will be on that FOMC rate decision. That's a key event happening this week, so watch out for that. Let's talk about action in the primary markets, and let's discuss a bunch of IPOs, because you've got 2 IPOs opening for subscription today. That's Sai Silks and Manoj Vaibhav Gems and Jewelers. You've also got three IPOs closing for subscription today. That's Sami Hotels, Zaggle Prepaid, Ocean Services, as well as Yatra Online. And you've got new listings today, Jupiter Lifeline Hospitals, as well as EMS. Now on the corporate action front, then you've got the analyst day of HDFC Bank happening today. And for L&T, the buyback tender offer opens today. So both these stocks will be in focus today. Well, in other cues to watch, Parliament's special session will begin from 18th of September to the 22nd of September. So also keep an eye out for this one.
Well, now let's move on to some global stories. So, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy is all set to visit the capital and meet with senators. Senate Major Leader Chuck Schumer, as well as the Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, will be hosting the meet. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy is also expected to meet with President Joe Biden at the White House.
And leading global investment firm KKR will be acquiring a 20% stake in Singapore telecommunication giant Singtel's regional data center business for $1.1 billion, taking the enterprise value of the overall regional data center business to $5.5 billion. Remember, the funds will be used to expand the business across Southeast Asian markets.
And the International Monetary Fund plans to urge China to boost its weak domestic consumption. MT Kristalina Georgieva said that they will ask Beijing to shift its growth model away from debt-fueled infrastructure investment and real estate, instead focus more on the domestic consumption. Without structural reforms, medium-term growth in China can fall below 4%, she added.
And staying with China, after the August macro print offered signs of relief and stability in the world's second largest economy, JP Morgan and ANZ have gone ahead and raised their 2023 growth forecast for the country. Both have raised the GDP forecast by 20 bips each to 5% and 5.1%. JP Morgan has also alluded to a notable recovery in retail sales and rise in the services activity.
TikTok has been fined €345 million for breaching privacy laws regarding handling children's personal data in the European Union. The Irish data watchdog has said the Chinese-owned video app had committed multiple breaches. Meanwhile, the DPC has given TikTok 3 months to bring all its processing into compliance.
Well, shifting focus then, Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the iconic Yashobhoomi, which is the International Convention and Expo Centre in Dwarka. This scheme will include carpenters, boat makers, small tool makers, blacksmiths, hammers and toolkit makers, locksmiths, goldsmiths, potters, stone sculptors, among others. All artisans will be given up to 3 lakh rupees and they will be identified through Gram Panchayat level, district level and finally at the state levels. Let's listen in to what PM Modi had to say on Inauguration Day.
आज समय की मांग है कि इन विश्वकर्मा साथियों को पहचाना जाए, उन्हें हर तरह से सपोर्ट किया जाए। साथियों, हमारी सरकार अपने विश्वकर्मा भाई बहनों को और उनका सम्मान बढ़ाने का, उनका सामर्थ्य बढ़ाने और उनकी समृद्धि बढ़ाने के लिए आज सरकार एक सहयोगी बनकर के आपके पास आई है। अभी इस योजना में 18 अलग अलग तरह का काम करने वाले विश्वकर्मा साथियों पर फोकस किया गया है और शायद ही कोई गांव ऐसा होगा कि जहां इस 18 प्रकार के काम करने वाले लोग न हो। इनमें लकड़ी का काम करने वाले कारपेंटर, लकड़ी के खिलौने बनाने वाले कारीगर, लोहे का काम करने वाले लोहार, सोने के आभूषण बनाने वाले सुनार, मिट्टी का काम करने वाले कुम्हार, मूर्तियां बनाने वाले मूर्तिकार, जूते बनाने वाले भाई, राजमिस्त्री का काम करने वाले लोग, हेयर कटिंग करने वाले लोग, कपड़े धुलने वाले लोग, कपड़े सिलने वाले लोग, माला बनाने वाले, फिशिंग नेट बनाने वाले, नाव बनाने वाले, ऐसे अलग अलग के तरह तरह के काम करने वाले साथियों को शामिल किया गया है। पीएम विश्वकर्मा योजना पर सरकार अभी 13,000 करोड़ रुपए खर्च करने वाली है।
And let's go across to Priyank to get us a tour of the convention center.
Prime Minister has already inaugurated Yashubhumi, and we are going to show you a glimpse of how the hall, the main hall will look like. Look at this lavish and very big construction which has been made and which has been dedicated by the Prime Minister to all those Vishwakarmas, those workers, artisans who have worked for the country over the period of decades. The Prime Minister has clearly stated that now there's a time when the country needs to realize that it's a time for having conference tourism kind of structure where conferences can be held. This is a main hall which can have a standing capacity for around 11,000 people, which has been dedicated along with the main IICC. We are standing inside the Yashubhumi. This is the main hall where all those conferences, those events, as well as those exhibitions can be made for the people who are coming from abroad to see the rich culture of India.
All right, thanks so much, Priyank, for taking us through that. But with that, let's slip into a very short break on this edition of Market Cafe. When we come back, we'll take stock of how the Asian markets have opened up this morning. Hi there, welcome back, and thanks so much for staying tuned to Market Cafe. Now let's talk about a stock that is going to be in focus today, and that is Tata Steel, because Tata Steel and the UK government have announced an agreement to invest in electric arc furnace steel making at the Port Talbot site with a capital cost of £1.25 billion, inclusive of a grant from the UK government of up to £500 million. Swami joins in to explain what this deal entails and also what Morgan Stanley's view is when it comes to this stock. Good morning, Swami. Take it away.
Well, Tata Steel has come out with this plan where they announced a restructuring initiative of their UK operations. Now they will be replacing the current 3.5 MTPA blast furnace plants with around 3 MTPA of electric arc furnace plant on the Port Talbot. Now the capital expenditure required for this is close to £1.25 billion, and of which 500 million, which is close to 40% of the total capital expenditure, will be provided by the UK government, while the remaining £750 million will be provided by Tata Steel's internal accruals. That means that most probably the India operations will be funding the UK operations capital expenditure. Now the completion timeline for this is close to 3 years, but there are some, the positives that are there because of this change or replacement in the plan that the company has announced is the fact that firstly it will put an end to the cash drain that we have been seeing when it comes to the UK operations. In FY23, the Tata Steel UK operation reported an EBITDA loss of close to £127 million, which increased to around £156 million on an annualized basis based on the Q1 FY24 number. Now, this will also lead to reduction of a carbon footprint to 0.4 TCS from around 2.16 TCS, and the cost savings are expected to be in the tune of around 150 to 170 pound per ton. However, uncertainties still remain despite the fact that this announcement has come in. Firstly, how the company is going to plan, how the company is planning to finance the losses in the short term, and also what is the strategy to reduce the workforce, which currently stands at around 8,000 workers. And this is the most important part, because reduction in the workforce could eventually lead to profitability of the UK plant. Also, what could be the associated financial implication because of this reduced workforce is also something the street would want to know and would want to have more clarity on this going forward.
Well, thank you, Samit, for taking us to the deal between Tata Steel as well as UK government and also flagging off the uncertainties going forward. But now shifting focus, the government has increased the windfall tax on crude petroleum to rupees 10,000 per ton from rupees 6,700 per ton. So let's go across to Prakash, who has more details on this.
The government has revised windfall gain taxes on petroleum products for next fortnight, and that is completely in sync with crude oil prices in global market during last fortnight. The notification that the finance ministry has come out with is windfall gain taxes on domestic crude has been increased to rupees 10,000 per ton, which was rupees 6,700 per ton during last fortnight. But the interesting part is additional special excise duty on ATF export and diesel export have been reduced. However, petrol export is still out of ambit of windfall gain tax. Additional taxes on petrol export is still zero, which is a good part for the companies which is exporting petrol in global markets. But it is important to note that international crude prices have been on rising streak ever since oil producers like Saudi Arabia and Russia extended their voluntary oil output cuts till the end of this year. Even on last earnings session, we have seen oil prices rose to a fresh 10-month high, which is a big worry for the consumers like India. Moving ahead, crude oil prices are also forming up due to return in global demand and fresh optimism around Chinese economy. And if prices continue to rise, that will lead to further hike in windfall gain taxes going ahead. So let's see how it pans out.
All right, Prakash, thanks for taking us through that. But there will be no power outage in the country. Now, that's the word coming in from Power Minister R.K. Singh. In this exclusive conversation he had with ET Now, he says that the ministry expects power demand to continue at the same pace. Meanwhile, he also adds that the government is importing coal for blending purposes. Listen in to this interaction he had with ET Now's Prakash Priyadarshi.
You know, there are a number of countries which have announced their targets for going to net zero. And many of these countries do not have the renewable energy capacities required to make green hydrogen. We are blessed. We are blessed with the sun. We are blessed with the wind. Our renewable energy capacity is already one of the largest in the world. And it's already one of the fastest growing in the world. And the other advantage which we have is that our renewable energy capacities of the least cost in the world. Our cost for manufacturing capacity of 1 megawatt of solar is $600,000. This is the cheapest in the world. So our green hydrogen will be one of the cheapest in the world. Green hydrogen, green ammonia will be one of the cheapest in the world, because renewable energy is 80% of the cost of green hydrogen, manufacturing green hydrogen and green ammonia. So we have, we already have had an exchange of drafts of agreement with Japan.
I have been covering this sector for long, and I must use this opportunity to compliment you for your proactive approach in order to meet commitments. But my question is, what could be possible steps that you are going to take further in order to maintain availability of coal and power demand?
So as I said, any shortfall, I'll meet with imports. The international coal prices have also come down. But apart from that, the Ministry of Coal is ramping up production. They've already ramped up production. It has just not reached the level which will meet my requirements. And the other difficulty which Ministry of Coal talks about is about the logistics, the transportation. Railway rakes, availability of railway rakes, and the railway routes being congested.
They're talking about rail sea rail mode.
No, so that we are already using rail sea road. So that there's a congestion in railways, the shortage of rakes.
Well, the government is all set to form a new set of norms for fraudulent loan apps and has asked Google as well as Apple to delist such apps from their platforms. Listen in to what Rajiv Chandrasekhar, who is from the Ministry of Electronics as well as Information Technology, had to say on the issue.
Just about 6 to 8 months ago, MeitY and the Home Ministry combined took down and blocked about 120 odd loan apps that were illegally operating in India. We have issued an advisory to both Google and to Apple that they must not onboard unsafe apps or illegal apps. And this is a strong message that we have given to both Google and Apple, because it is our government's objective and mission to keep the internet safe and trusted for all digital Nagriks. And we intend to have earliest a meeting with the RBI to make sure there is a whitelisting. That means there is a norm of only allowing permitted loan apps on these two Play stores.
Well, that's the word coming in from Rajiv Chandrasekhar. But moving on to another big voice, Dinesh Kumar Khara, who's the chairman at SBI, is confident that SBI's credit growth trajectory will improve, and the bank is aiming for 12 to 14% credit growth. Let's go across and listen into what he had to say.
As of now, our credit deposit ratio, even at a global level, is also somewhere around 72%. If we look at only the domestic, we are at 65%. We have enough buffer available with us to support the growth requirement of the economy, and we are only ensuring that we pick up the assets which meets our risk appetite, and that is something which our major focus is. So I think we have the required ability to support this kind of a growth. And my normal expectation is that we should be growing somewhere in the range of 12 to 14%.
So 12 to 14% you guided for. I'm again being very careful with words here. When your assumption for GDP growth is sub 7. Next year assumption, according to Mr. Khara, is going to be sub 7 plus. So 12 to 14 should become 14 to 16 then. I'm trying to get maybe a headline from you.
No, I'm only trying to say that maybe if at all it is 6.8, it would be around 12. But if it is at 7% plus, it would be at 14. Okay. So the range remains the same.
And SBI has historically beaten the market. So then if I add that as a factor, then 14 should also be beaten.
Let us wait and watch.
We've seen a war of liabilities. Something where you always said, look, the smaller banks are suffering, but for SBI, because of the SLR and the other tools we have, the impact would be minimum. Now that the war in liability, according to you, is settling down, what happens to SBI?
Well, as far as the liabilities are concerned, apart from the war, we also look at it from the point of view that liability is more of a franchise. So we have got large customer base, and we must ensure that their interest is protected. So with that in mind, we have been tweaking the interest rates here and there in some of the buckets, more so in the fixed deposit, and to ensure that we should be in a position to cater to such investor depositors base through offering inflation adjusted returns also. So I think having said that, we are having a very clear focus in terms of improving our CASA 1 and improving the CA component of the CASA. Traditionally we used to depend upon the government deposits, but of late you would have observed that the government is also moving towards the just-in-time funding of the accounts. And that is one of the reasons why we have started, actually for about 6 months plus now, we had recalibrated our strategy, and we started looking at the trade commerce industry and the transaction solutions in a very big way. And we have already started seeing the positive results of that. And that gives us a hope that maybe the CA component of the CASA will improve.
And with that, let's slip into a short break, but stay tuned on the show because we will be discussing more stock-specific news on the other side of the break. Welcome back to the show, and over the weekend we have big news coming in from the Defence Acquisition Council. A slew of orders on the back on Indian Army and Navy as well as Air Force that was announced to the tune of 45,000 crore. Well, a number of companies will benefit from this. BEL, they received new orders worth around 3,000 crore and their total order win, it's around 14,400 crore. Remember, the company had given a guidance of around 20,000 crore for this fiscal. Moving on the Indian Army side, light armored multi-purpose vehicles, LAMEV, expected order wins of around 800. That will be benefiting companies like Tata Motors, Bharat Forge as well as L&T. And we have a high mobility vehicle also where the likely beneficiaries are BEML, Ashok Leyland, Tata Motors as well as Bharat Forge. And on the Indian Navy side, we have orders coming in for JRSE, Cochin Shipyard, BEL as well as Medani, because next generation survey vehicles for the Indian Army, that also has been announced, and these companies are the likely beneficiaries. On the Indian Air Force, we have avionic upgradation of Dornier aircraft, and it's positive for companies like HAL as well as Data Patterns. Dhruvastra short-range air-to-surface missile is positive for BDL, and also aircraft with associated equipments of around 11,000 crore, that will be positive for HAL, BEL as well as Data Patterns. So it's a day for defense stocks today, so keep an eye on the defense stocks counter today.
Well, defense will be in focus, absolutely, Lisa. But let's shift gears and take a look at SBI Card Management Meet. Now, Morgan Stanley has released a note on the key takeaways from the meet, and Vamakshi is here to take you through all of those highlights. Good morning, Vamakshi, and take it away.
Well, yes, SBI Cards in focus on the back of an analyst meet, and here are some of the important takeaways that have come in from Morgan Stanley. They have highlighted that spending growth is trending well ahead of the festive season. They have highlighted that share of interest-bearing assets and overall receivables also continue to rise, and in fact, the share of EMI loans is a bit higher among the tier 2, tier 4 cities, and in fact has become a much popular choice in the super premium segment, which is the non-cost EMI segment. They're expecting the NIMs, that is the net interest margin, to be stable to slightly lower in this second quarter, and in fact, as far as the borrowing costs are concerned, they're expecting to see an increase of around 10 to 15 basis points. As far as the operating cost to income ratio is concerned, for FY24, they have given a guidance of anywhere between 58 to 60%, and they have, as far as the asset quality is concerned, they have highlighted that the credit costs are expected to decrease from the second half onwards. So all in all, these were all the important takeaways from the meet for SBI Cards, and that is the reason we should definitely keep an eye out for this counter.
Well, thank you, Amakshi, for that, but also take us through the list of brokerages on your radar.
Bank. This stock will be in focus on the back of a note that came in from DAM Capital. They have initiated coverage with a buy rating, target price of 900 rupees per share. They have highlighted that the upbeat growth prospects do continue for the stock, and in fact they're expecting to see an AUM growth CAGR of nearly 24% from FY24 to FY26. The company has a continuous strategy for increasing its presence, but in fact digital is a strategy that they will be focusing on. Apart from that, the company does have very strong asset quality as well as underwriting, but they're also highlighting that they are envisioning growth for the decade and beyond. So given those positive factors, DAM Capital has initiated coverage on AU Small Finance Bank with a buy rating, target price of 900 rupees per share. Moving on to Fusion Micro, we have a note coming in from InCred. What they have highlighted is that Fusion Microfinance is posting some robust growth. In fact, this could be led by deepening of its penetration as well as its diversified presence. Superior margins is what Fusion Microfinance has posted because it is a microfinance company. Obviously, the rate at which the loans are given to customers is a bit high, and therefore what InCred is expecting is that the superior margins are expected to stay amid fixed rate loans as well as improving liability. Apart from that, the surge in the near-term slippages is also expected, and in fact the collection efficiency has peaked. So given all those factors, InCred has initiated coverage with an ad rating on Fusion Microfinance with a target price of 800 rupees per share. And lastly, let's focus in on banking counters. We have a note coming in from Bank of America, and what they have highlighted is that the monsoon deficit as well as loan waivers are both equally impactful. In fact, in the current cycle, which started from 2008 onwards, Axis Bank has grown the agri loans the most, that is at a 26% CAGR, while SBI has grown it the least at a 6% CAGR. Agri loan to states with monsoon deficits is just around 9% of agri loans, and overall the impact on the system is expected to be around 1%. They've also said that any adverse impact appears to be very manageable at this stage, and also in relative terms, when we look at private banks, they are less exposed to the more sensitive small marginal farmer segment. So all in all, on the back of this brokerage note, watch out for banks as well.
Alright, Amakshi, we will be keeping an eye out on banks as well as the other counters that you've mentioned. Thanks a lot for taking us through that. But we're joined in our studios by Ansh, and Ansh, it's Nifty continues to be at those high levels, life high levels, and a new week of trading. So take us through what the FNO setup looks like.
Sure. So we'll start with Nifty first. Nifty has been rising, touching record highs and giving record high closing. Also on chart, index has been making higher lows from last 7 consecutive sessions. This is a strong sign of an uptrend. Now let's see what happened in FNO segment on Friday. Long buildup was seen in Nifty futures with OI increasing by 1.2%, which keeps the sentiment positive. Whereas on the option front, we saw good call buying at 20,200 strike, indicating traders expecting Nifty to climb over this level. Also on put side, we saw put writing at same 20,200 strike, which means everyone is expecting Nifty to stay above this level. So here we are seeing both call and put traders agreeing Nifty to stay above 20,200 level at least till this weekly closing. Now let's shift our focus to what FIS did. In index futures, they added 2,700 longs, showing some moderate positivity in future space. Whereas on option front, we are seeing all positions getting added, be it call longs, call shorts, put long, put shorts. So this means that both call and put traders are anticipating a limited movement in indices within a range. Let's say for Nifty, maybe roughly 100 points above and below its current level of 20,200, suggesting a range of 20,100 to 20,300. So in short, with some positivity, a range of 20,100 to 20,300 has been anticipated, and overall trend looks positive till Nifty trades above its previous lows.
Thank you, Ansh, for taking us through the FNO snapshot, but also take us through the list of stocks that will be in focus today.
Sure. So Indian Oil Corporation will be the first stock in focus for today's trading session, as board has approved an additional investment of around 903 crore in Hindustan Uric and Rasayan. Apart from this, BEL will also be in focus, as company has received an order worth 3,000 crore from Cochin Shipyard for supply of various equipment consisting sensors, weapon equipment, fire control system. RMC Switch will also be in focus, as company's JV has received an order worth 113 crore from Maharashtra government. Jansol Engineering has acquired 54% stake in Scorpius Trackers for 135 crore. REC will also be in focus, as company extend loan funding worth 9,156 crore for 2 projects. Lastly, Sterlite Tech will be in focus, as company has launched manufacturing facility in United States. So keep an eye on the stocks.
Well, thanks, Ansh, for taking us through that. We will be keeping an eye out on all of these stocks today. But moving away from the stock world and into general news then, Carlos Sainz wins the Singapore Grand Prix and ends a Max Verstappen streak. Now, Carlos won P1, followed by McLaren's Lando Norris at P2 and Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton at P3, as the three teams went wheel to wheel with one another at the Singapore Grand Prix. Sainz led all 62 laps of the race, while Verstappen's 10-race winning streak has been brought to an end after he finished 5th. And British comedian and actor Russell Brand has been accused of rape and sexual assault and emotional abuse between the years 2006 and 2013. This, according to joint investigation by British news organizations. 4 women have alleged that Brand sexually assaulted them during a period when he worked at the said organizations.
And no new cases of the Nipah virus have been reported in Kerala since the last 2 days. Administrative authorities, however, are still keeping an eye out. Kerala's health minister has said that genomic sequencing of the virus will be done. Shanti Niketan, where poet Rabindranath Tagore built the Viswa Bharati University over the century ago, has been inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List. The announcement was made by the world body on Twitter.
Well, as we wrap this edition of Market Cafe, we caught up with a bunch of experts on where they see the markets headed after Nifty has touched that all-time high levels. As we bid you goodbye, listen in to what they had to say.
Going forward, and that's where we're very bullish on as financials and discretionary consumption, and also affordable luxury kind of consumption that we're looking at. Discretionary is what we're looking at, and there again in say aspirational luxury. So obviously hospitality comes in a big way. Pure textiles move in here. There are shoe companies as such which come in, and obviously these are few sectors that are playing out for us.
Without labeling them as defensive or growth, I would say that bank today makes a lot of more sense, because whatever growth we are talking about in the economy, definitely it has to happen through the banking sector. I keep talking about IT as one of the sectors which I generally have a positive bias towards because of a simple fact that this is a very strong cash generating sector. And more importantly, this is a sector which also distributes a large part of the profit back to the shareholders. And hence, from let's say dividend yield or cash flow yield perspective, this is one of the better sectors to look at.
While the Indian consumer story is not lost to anybody, Indian consumer has been doing well for last couple of decades. We have a large middle class population where the dependency ratio is falling, per capita income is rising. So obviously Indian consumer story is not going anywhere.